near and dear to my heart is active transportation, which really is another way of saying cycling. So I'm bringing a health lens to the board, but I'm also an avid cyclist, and I'm seeing some great changes in our community already when it comes to cycling. And I want to be part of helping shape things as that moves forward. All the time in my practice, I'm dealing with patients that come in with chronic diseases, and we're working on ways that we can make those chronic diseases better. So how do you manage things without medication? We talk about lifestyle management, and that essentially means your level of activity and what your diet looks like. And so constantly having these conversations about getting out and being more active. Why more active? And I think it's pretty universally known, but I'll just point out that physical activity has a lot of benefits. So it decreases the chance of developing in the first place a whole bunch of chronic diseases. Things like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and obesity are all linked with physical activity. And so increased physical activity decreases the chance of developing those things. And not only that, but if you develop problems, chronic diseases, part of the management of those chronic diseases is increased physical activity. Besides just the impact on chronic diseases, we know for a fact that being more physically active actually extends life expectancy. And so depending on the level of physical activity, life expectancy goes up for about 1.5 years for people that are moderately physically active. And those that are quite physically active, life expectancy goes up over 3 years. So that may or may not sound important to you. And I guess quantity of life is certainly important for people to think about, but it's also the quality of life as well. And I think if we envision someone that's physically active on a regular basis and enjoying what they do, their quality of life increases. And there are studies that have looked at quality of life surveys for those that are more physically active and identify a huge benefit to increased activity. So that's just sort of my medical segue to say that physical activity is important. I think most people know that already, but wanted to try to point some of those things out. During COVID, many communities actually looked at active transportation and specifically cycling as part of their response in their COVID action plan. And that has caused other communities to vastly expand their cycling networks. And I think we're seeing, if you're driving around town lately, driving south of town between town and Highway 50, you'll notice that they've installed cycling lanes on both sides of Highway 20, and that's going to extend, I think, all the way down to Holiday Beach. So that's an excellent example of a step forward that our town is making. Some of the pieces about Amherstburg that make cycling such an excellent fit are that it has moderate climate, really flat terrain, so you don't have to push yourself uphill, which if you've been to other areas in the province or in the world, it's a lot harder to cycle. It's really easy to cycle in Amherstburg. We've got proximity to wineries and to the Chrysler Greenway as well. In other areas, as I said, the cycling grid has greatly expanded and cycling lanes have expanded. And some of the things that Amherstburg needs to do moving forward is to really look at planning out an enhanced cycling grid, one that connects residents with destinations. So we're connecting where people live with parks, restaurants, cafes, wineries, stores, and businesses, I think is really important. To realize that cycling lanes are for cycling and not a nice place to dump a load of gravel for your landscape project, or to put your recycling bins or your waste or whatever. So those are the challenges that as a cyclist I see all the time. And really important for cycling lanes not to end halfway between concessions so that you're going along and it's suddenly stopped. So some proactive thinking needs to happen. In busy areas of town, and I'm thinking especially on Sandwich Street, protected cycling lanes would offer safety for people that aren't otherwise comfortable cycling with traffic so close. And there also needs to be supportive infrastructure. And I know that the town is working on elements of this, like bike corrals and self-serve maintenance stations throughout town to facilitate people being able to more actively participate. And the other important thing, I think, is trying to connect with funding. So the countywide active transport system is a source of funding. The federal government just dedicated $400 million for active transport. So what are we doing as a town to try to connect in with some of those financial resources to make our cycling grid even better than it already is? So if we can go to the next couple of slides, there's just a few sort of viewpoints. And, you can think about cyclists as sort of, the peloton that you see screaming through the county. But this is the reality. Lots of people enjoy cycling, not just as an athletic pursuit, but as a leisure activity, or they view it as a utilitarian thing. It's, I'm going to actually use my bike to get to the shop to get what I need and get back home. Cycling intersects with so many of the other initiatives that we have, including climate change, streets are for people, and intersects as well with speed. Next slide. There's just some examples of a protected cycling lane in another municipality. And I promise that on future episodes, I'm working on amassing some local cycling photos. So I've got a nice high quality digital camera on the front and back of my bike at all times now, taking pictures and video of everything that happens. So hopefully we'll have some fun things to take a look at in the future.
Awesome.
I don't know if there's any questions around cycling before we move on to
I've got a couple questions, I guess, for you, Tim, over on cycling. Now, you mentioned you're an avid cycler. Why should this be important for the average Joe Blow who's out there in Amherstburg who's not an avid cycler?
Yeah, again, so the cycling that we've seen in these slides are the kind of cycling that I'm talking about. The cycling that Renee does with her family, where they get everyone, loaded up and on our way, and we're going to go do a fun trip into town. I saw Renee at the Navy Yard Park the other day while I was enjoying a nice ice cream with my kids, and they were cycling. And so it's that kind of connection to a local resource. It's not about a gym membership or something fancy like that. It's getting out and doing something that's right in front of you. And so turning our town into a little bit more fitness oriented.
Tim, can you go a little bit in more detail about the protected lanes? We see pictures here, obviously, but why are those important?
Yeah, so if you can envision, and next time you're driving around on Sandwich Street, there is actually a cycle lane there, but it's right on the edge of a really busy thoroughfare. And the concern is that when you've got a whole lot of stuff going on, that the cyclist doesn't get seen, and someone makes a sudden turn into a business and takes a cyclist out. So the idea of lanes is to really separate out the cycling from the vehicle traffic. And it has actually a traffic calming effect as well. So when you're in situations like this, it actually gets motorists to take notice of what's going on and be a little bit more mindful of those that are using the cycle lane.
Perfect. I'm just seeing a comment here from Patrick. The Parks and Recreation Committee has discussed the possibility of realigning the traffic lanes along Sandwich Street that would include dedicated bike lanes. Thank you, Patrick.
That's awesome.
Okay. Anybody else with questions? I guess we can get to them as well. Darren, I'm seeing dedicated versus separated bike lanes are different. Need to look at safety of cycling infrastructure. Bike lanes are more than a white strip on the road on the side of the right stripe on the side of the road. Yep, very good point.